Welcome, friends and family. Super excited to be back here with you again today to share with you a little bit more of how to win friends and influence people from the legendary Dale Carnegie. Casey, my friend, and I are going through this, just kind of going chapter by chapter. And today, one of the chapters we're talking about is an easy way to become a good conversationalist. As Casey did to me a couple weeks ago, let me ask you, in your opinion, what is one of the easiest and best ways to become a good conversationalist? Now, do you see what I'm doing? I'm listening for your reply. And that's the answer, right, Casey?
Oh yeah, that's 100% what it is, and it goes against the human nature. This entire book goes against the human nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the point of how to become better.
Yeah.
Because anybody can be average, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, an easy way to become a good conversationalist is, again, to be that listener, and I think you did it beautifully just then. So, there's a lot of good things in this chapter, and it keys around the specific point of being sympathetic to your fellow man, right? Understanding what they want, just listening to them. You know, how often have you been in the situation where somebody comes to you and they lay out an issue or they lay out a problem or whatever else, and you say, well, you could fix that by doing this, and they get mad at you, right? they get upset, and you're like, why are they upset at me? Because I'm offering a solution to what you're bringing me. I don't understand where this conflict is. Right. And the truth is they didn't want you to fix it. They probably already knew how to fix it. They just wanted somebody to listen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so true.
And how good it is to say, hey, do you need me to just listen to you right now, or are you looking for a solution to this?
That's really good. And I think a lot of times when we're quick to give the solution, we have the right heart. You know what I mean? Like, It's easy to get aggravated at the person that's ready to fix every problem. But truthfully, they have the right heart, but they didn't hear the right question. Mm-hmm. He actually goes on in here to say that that there's a lot of people that, during certain times of the year, holidays or whatever, end up getting sick and going and seeing the doctors because they're just lonely and they want to be heard. That kind of was like a wow factor to me. There's just people out there that are just extremely lonely, don't have anybody that's being sympathetic or nobody that's willing to listen to them. And so they check themselves into a hospital or get sick because they want somebody to listen to them.
It's an innate desire, right? Even in in the account of the gospel, when Jesus is in the garden and he's praying, and it's the night before he's going to be taken by the Romans, the night before he gets betrayed. And he knows that it's coming. And he's praying for the cup to be passed from him, if it be thy will, and all that. He gets aggravated at his apostles. You can't even stay awake for an hour.
Yeah.
I just need you here with me. Like, I'm in my roughest time. I just need you here, and you can't even stay awake.
Wow, that's so good, man. That's so good.
And but he does. It says in there that he knew they were tired, and
they didn't have it in him to stay awake with him. And he was, at that time, it says that he was crying out tears of blood. Right. I mean, that's how anguished he was. Right. And sometimes it takes a lot for people to admit they just want to be heard. Right. It's like they'll go the long way around. And again, if we don't learn how to ask the right questions and listen, sometimes that journey can go on forever. In relationships.
So if we don't ask the right
questions.
The right questions.
Yeah.
So how do you become a good listener? You become genuinely interested, and we've used that a lot in this series. This is a good name for the series. You be genuinely interested in the other person, and you do that by asking questions, and that's the only way you can do it. There's a story in here where he's talking to a botanist at this party, and botany is the study of plants and flowers and things like that. He had an interest in botany, so he talked to the gentleman. He even said that he knew that he ignored the social rules and didn't talk to anybody else. So, he acknowledges that I was rude because I didn't talk to anybody else, but I was interested in what this man was doing in his life. And, he says at the end of the night, the botanist says, you're a great conversationalist. And he says, I hardly even spoke. I just asked questions because I had a genuine interest in it. He said, I didn't know any more about botany than the anatomy of a penguin. That's what he says, He said, so I couldn't talk to him about it if I wanted to.
Right.
But I just asked questions because I had an interest in it.
And that made for a great conversation. The
Right.
botanist loved it, and he
Yes.
got to share all of his knowledge. And obviously, Carnegie enjoyed the process of learning because he was
Correct.
curious.
Yes.
So, Casey, in your life, when you think about some people that have been really good listeners for you, has that been people that are close to you, like your family, or has it been outside friends, or where do you find those good listeners?
That's a great question. Obviously, I believe that my wife and I are getting better at that. I believe that's something that we definitely are starting to grow in a little bit more as we get older. It only took, going on 14 years of marriage to try to get that figured out.
Yeah. Can I say something interesting right there? That Noah told Lindsay and I this, my wife and I, the other day. It was like yesterday. He's like, how long y'all been married? Well, it'll be 15 years December 27th. He said, well, y'all are still a young marriage. And we're thinking to ourselves, well, 15 years, I don't know if I'd consider that a young marriage or not. He said, I'm just 13, and I'm considered young. So, yeah. But you're still, so I mean, we say 14, 15 years like it's a long time, but really, Kelton's how old?
Kelton is now 7 going on, he'll be 8 in April.
So that's young. And then you double that, you're at 14, 15 years. So, but it does seem like a long time, but we're still young in our relationships, right? So we've still got a lot to learn.
Yes, most certainly. And I think definitely with that, I believe that my sister is that. My sister and I are very, very similar in a lot of ways. That we are solutions-driven people, and
quick to give the answer.
We're very quick to say, "Hey, well, you could do this. Well, why are you doing that? You could do this." But in those times, I believe my sister is really good at that too. So, other than that, I've had great friends and family. I've had some great mentors. I believe you fall in that category for me for the last few years now, and I had some great. I'll be honest with you, I had some great professors at Tech that I felt were pretty involved with this, that I was really close with. I don't know that I realized that at the time, but reflecting back on it, I believe highly. So, what about yourself? Who have you got?
Yeah, it's hard for me with the knowledge that I now have with the Carnegie training. I know when I should be quiet, and I know when I've asked questions, I should let them answer. In the disc, I am a high I. And then after that, an S sometimes or a D, depending on that is very situational. But I have a tendency to talk too much. So a lot of times I don't let people finish their sentences. And they're still great conversations a lot of the time, but I know I'm not really getting the main fruit out of that. So I really have to, well, me and you went out a while back. We sat down with our favorite CPA, Michelle.
Right.
And prior to having dinner with her that night, I said, man, I just talk too much, Casey. I've got to learn how to ask more questions and be quiet. And so we went out to dinner that night. We had a great dinner. And afterwards, we got up and you said, well, you did a lot better job if that's what you were trying to do, was ask more questions and listen more. Because we learned a lot about Michelle that night.
Right.
We took a genuine interest in her. And she got to share a lot with us. So hopefully it helped her. One thing I've learned too, that people are generally pretty comfortable talking about themselves. Not everybody. Some people are challenged to talk about themselves. But a lot of people are pretty comfortable. So if you talk about their business or their profession or what they're good at, like if I talk to you or Lucas about music, I'd learn a lot, I know. Trying to find something that's interesting to the person is important.
Right.
I've been mentored a lot through books. John Maxwell would be somebody I'd say has been a true friend of mine and a great mentor. I was introduced to Maxwell when I was starting a youth program in Doyle Methodist. We started off with 8 kids, and I thought I knew a lot. Like, I was super cocky and overconfident. We got in that first day with these 8 kids, and I was like, what do we do now? I just thought it would fall in place. But I will tell you this, man. I got asking these kids questions. I got to know about their lives, their personal lives, their home lives, more than a lot of them, unfortunately, didn't have dads. And we grew that youth group. They helped me grow that youth group from 8 to 80. And we did that in a relatively short time. And man, I found out things that these children were going through that was just horrendous. And,
Right.
But I had to listen to them. And I'll tell you this, I look back, one thing I'm a little ashamed of is that I didn't relate to some of those kids. Like I never told them some of the challenges I had growing up
Right.
because I was actually still ashamed of some of the stuff that, that really wasn't my doing, but I carried that over.
Right.
But these kids would get to talk to me and tell me about their lives, and I felt like it was unburdening for them. Like they finally found somebody they could talk to. So I wanted to be like John Maxwell for others. So he mentored me so well through books. I mean, he signed my daughter's leadership Bible, and I've seen him, shook hands with him, but I've never had a conversation like you and I are.
Yeah.
But he was probably the mentor to me, and I think we can get mentored through books. I learn from a lot of people I'm around. So whether you're older or younger, I still have a lot to learn from almost anybody. So I'm always trying to learn from others. But Maxwell to me was probably my biggest mentor.
Yeah, I understand that completely. The dinner night, that was the tornado night.
Mm-hmm.
That's when
That's when I found out that that teacher mode came out in you. That
Yeah.
big tornado and those winds came gushing through. Have you ever seen anything like that?
I've been around it, yeah, but not in Houston, Texas. No, that's the first time I've ever been around it there.
Yeah. And I found out then that KC's a bit of a protector because those winds were bustling through. Benches were getting, water was coming in the doorway, and there's KC grabbing towels and cleaning up the water that was coming through and then getting everybody. He's like, hey, is there a bathroom or something around here? And we ended up finding a little tunnel and kind of set everybody back in there. And luckily, it wasn't a full-on hurricane, but it could have done some damage.
Yeah,
man.
it was rough. That was a rough night. Mentor through books. I've never been much of a reader till I joined this team with that, and but there is great knowledge in these books and these books that we do each quarter. With that being said, I can see where being mentored through books is great. Again, it's the people you hang around with, right? So it's the people you associate with, and how do you become a good conversationalist? You learn how to listen, and you take a genuine interest in the other person.
Yeah. So guys, that would be kind of our challenge to you. Who do you know that listens well? I actually think of some of the best listeners in my life have been John Semino, Duke Davis. Those are good brothers to me, man. And when me and Duke, before we even worked together, we used to meet regular at the YMCA, and I could just share a lot with him, and he'd share a lot with me, and that's what friendship's about. John Semino is another one of those guys that when I'm around him, I feel like sometimes I go on too much. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times I'll say, John, I'm sorry, I've just talked about myself the whole time. And he'll be like, that's okay. And I think that's kind of a gift that we look at The Working Genius, and in Patrick Lencioni's book, The Working Genius, you have some people that are enablers. And that's not a bad thing. That's the way they're natured. And so they want to naturally help. And so for me, those people have always really stood out to me. John and Duke have been like that for me. I hope I can be that way for my kids. I hope Noah and Emmy feel comfortable coming and talking to me. It's very important for me to have that relationship with them. I didn't have that with my mother. I didn't really get to know my dad till I was about 15, 16 years old. So not having that at a young age, it can do damage and can be very discouraging. So I want to make sure that I'm able to do that for Noah and Emmy. I think that's why I got into youth group and did excel at that, because I would listen to those children. I know you were part of a teacher in Crossville, and you really built good, strong relationship with those children. And a lot of those children came from home lives that weren't best, right?
Very similar in a lot of ways, to that, and still have a great connection with those kids even today when I see them out in town or whatever the case may be. It's probably about every month or so I'll get a friend request on Facebook or something from one of them,
That's awesome,
from back then, and just kind of keep up with them. So the challenge would be, ask twice as many questions as you give responses.
So let that be a game this week. Think about that when you're sitting down with your spouse or with your children or with your workmates. How can I learn more about them? How can I show interest in them? How can I get them to open up and it not be centered around ourselves? That's our challenge. I hope you guys have a great week. Appreciate you taking time to listen. If we can do anything, please let us know. Thank you.